Okay, Jim, because we've known each other for so long, it's hard for me to even remember some of the answers to these questions. It might take you some time to think back too. So,
Okay.
before we started working together in 2020, where were you at as a leader, and what were some of the things that you were facing to cause you to think, it might be good to start working with Al?
Yeah, I had been in my role as a leader uh, for about a year and a half. And I frankly, I got to a place where I was exhausted. And because I was doing a lot at work, I was doing a lot at home, and I was doing a lot outside of home and work too. Um, and so there were a lot of things coming my way, a lot of pressures coming my way. And, as I look back on it, there's a lot that was kind of going in my favor that I didn't even appreciate as far as things going well at work. I didn't have a lot of the issues and stuff that kind of came up later. And even so, I was exhausted and overworked and not managing my time super well. And I really didn't, as I look back on it now, I mean, I didn't know myself well
Mm,
enough. And I think that was the thing I loved about leadership and working together, was this idea that when you become a leader, you look in a mirror that you've never seen before, and you don't always like what's staring at you. But how do you take that and help it to make you better versus take you down?
yeah, so true. And what were some of the pressures you were feeling? I mean, you work at a world-class organization at Google. What were some of the pressures you were feeling in your role as a leader after a year and a half or so?
Yeah, I think it's kind of balancing, outstanding performance with trying to create an outstanding culture
Hmm.
and marrying those things together.
Hmm.
Even though you just because you have one doesn't mean you have the other.
Right.
And I think that's something that I didn't understand fully yet,
Hmm.
um, but something that I kind of realized later. And frankly, that you can't have a high performing team that's sustainable if you don't have kind of great culture. And then I think more importantly, the thing I realized, because I came to the end of myself at that time,
Hmm.
was that if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of anybody else.
Yeah, so true. We had a chance to work together both individually, and then as I entered into the table group, um, started working with your team as well. What are maybe a couple of benefits that you experienced either individually or as a leader of a team? What was some clarity that was helpful for you?
Yeah, I think I'll start individually and then go to the team, like, because I think that's how it had to. That's actually, it's beautiful how it worked out that way. Because I don't think I would have been able to help the team if I hadn't helped myself first, and that was something that we worked on and talked about.
Yeah.
Going through some different just personal stuff that was not related to work, that were challenges and things like that that I had to think through. And I think some of the mindfulness stuff we worked on, and it wasn't like cheesy, you know, like I think that gets misused sometimes, like mindfulness stuff. But I think the stuff that was like core to us is like slowing down,
Right.
taking literally learning how to breathe
Right.
well, to
Yeah.
settle down and get present with where I was. Because I think the thing for me, and it's part of what I love about my work, is
Mhm.
that there's constant change, constant motion, and I feel productive in those situations. But sometimes, if you don't take that second to kind of detach and pause, you can be just spinning your wheels
Yeah.
and ineffectively and burn out quick. And so I think the thing that we worked on that helped me most was, you know, being okay with where I was, and then kind of charting a plan to where I want to be, and knowing that that's going to take time, but also that that's going to take real courage.
Yeah.
And I think people underestimate that. Like, it takes real courage to look yourself in the mirror, understand who you are, your strengths, weaknesses, and whatever, and then act in such. And the question that stands out that you asked me that was so helpful, especially as I was working through coming back from exhaustion, is, Jim, what would take more courage?
Mm-hmm.
And that question just is repeated to me, and I've used it since, is being a great question for me to ask myself, because the question I was seeing is, should I take today off because I'm really, really burnt and I'm not going to be able to do well for my family or for my team or for anybody? Should I gut it out, or should I take the break I need to rest, recharge, and get back going? And the question was, what would take more courage? And I never thought of it that way. And the answer was, taking a break actually takes more courage. And being able to share that with my team, and saying, hey, here's what's going on. I'm going to take a break so I can come back stronger. And that was something you and I talked about, even like scripting. Like, how do I even write this? How do I even communicate this to a team? Because that is very countercultural and different, right? But I was just surprised and, rewarded from the courage you instilled in me to do that, with people giving me, just great feedback and really support for doing that. And how that impacted the team was that they had psychological safety and freedom to do that for themselves when they needed to.
That's right. Yeah.
And that allowed us to have sustainable performance from there.
That's so true. And you had built a strong culture of trust within that team and psychological safety. And I was looking at some old notes that showed that, I remember we were celebrating together that you had achieved your marks and had some of your most productive year at year end, after you were learning some of those rhythms, even after taking some time away,
Yeah.
And so yeah, that had a big effect on your team. And then how helpful was it to learn one another's working styles within your team? We had done some different tools and used different tools for that. How helpful was that for you?
That was incredibly helpful. I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes, because you'll sometimes find you have conflict with people and you don't know what it is. It's like, man, I get on the phone with this person and we just don't click. We just don't see the world the same way. Yeah. And I think that's part of what makes diverse teams so high performing, is because you do need everybody's things. And when you have diverse teams, you're going to have conflict.
Yeah.
It's not if, it's when. But then how do you equip people to handle that conflict with appreciation for people being different, and knowing that that's part of like the, superpower, if you will, of the team. Yeah. And so I love that for my team, getting to see and appreciate that about each other and about themselves. Because I mean, you and I had one person in particular who said, well, this isn't me. Yeah. And you ask everybody else on the team, is this them? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So there was some power in that kind of self-awareness that came. And I think, also selfishly, it was great for me to have a view of the board with some data behind it, of like who's doing what, and then also who likes to do what. I think that's when we worked through, the geniuses, the working genius, that was, understanding why people gravitate to different tasks. And now I can match them up, understanding that it's not about competency, it's about what they like to do. And I think that freed some people up too, to kind of be hand raisers for stuff that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. It was really powerful. It was surprising and a lot of fun, frankly, once we figured that out.
Awesome. So last question, I know you got to run. And it's, when someone works with me or us in terms of the table group, or just consulting with me, that requires discipline. It requires courage. It requires commitment. and sacrifice in some ways. What would you say to someone who was considering starting this process, but is like on the fence and not really sure?
I think the thing I would say is you can't afford not to do it.
Mhm.
I think it's less safe to not do it. You know, I think people always gravitate towards safe sometimes, and they think, well, I don't know if I want to know that. I don't know if I want to turn that stone over.
Yeah.
And my thing would be, you know, hindsight 2020. It's like you can't afford not to. There's too much there, and I think, you know, the sooner that you can get this information about yourself and about your team, and the thing you always talk about, right, is, you know, the best leader is the most self-aware leader. Um, I don't see how you grow without it, frankly. And it does require all those things: courage, respect. It requires humility. Um, but yeah, I don't see how you can afford not to.
Jim, you're a great leader. I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
Grateful for you too, Al. Thank you.